The phone rings at 2:14 in the morning, and Nathan Keller knows before he answers it that it is about his brother. This is not intuition. This is not the psychic sibling bond that people in movies describe. This is the specific, exhausted logic of a 36-year-old man who has spent his entire life being the one who gets called when something goes wrong with Marcus. Because Marcus does not call when things go wrong, Marcus calls when things are going right. When there is news to share and credit to distribute. When the world is behaving the way Marcus Keller has always assumed it would, and when things go wrong, Marcus calls their parents. And their parents call Nathan because Nathan is, in the family's functional architecture, the person who handles the things that cannot be handled by admiration alone. He answers, it is his mother, Nathan. Her voice is the specific quality of controlled that people achieve after a lifetime of managing their panic into something that presents as composure. Marcus is in the hospital, Seattle. They are saying it's serious. What happened? Nathan says he is already sitting up. He is already looking for his shoes. He collapsed at a conference. They are saying his heart. Your father and I are at the airport. We're getting on the first flight. A pause. Nathan, I need you to go before us. You're in Portland. You can drive. You can be there. I know, Nathan says. I know how far Portland is from Seattle. He says this without edge, because he has had 36 years to sand the edge off the things he says to his mother. The specific smoothing of a person who learned early that his emotions were an inconvenience in a household organized around someone else's. I'm leaving now, he says. Drive safe. He hangs up. He looks at the ceiling of the apartment that his parents have visited once in 3 years. He feeds his cat. He grabs his go bag, which he keeps packed by the door because he is, among the things nobody in his family has noticed him becoming, a wilderness search and rescue volunteer who is called out on short notice several times a year. He drives north in the dark toward his brother. To understand Nathan Keller, you have to understand the Keller family's specific taxonomy of worth, not the cruelty of it, because it was not, in the main, cruel, but the structure of it, the way attention and resources and expectation distributed themselves across 2 sons born 4 years apart as naturally and as unthinkingly as water finding its level. Marcus Keller was, from the beginning, the kind of child that families organized themselves around. Not because he demanded it. He was not a demanding child, he was a charming one, which is considerably more effective, but because his particular combination of intelligence and social ease and physical grace made him, in every room he entered, the most interesting person. And rooms always reorganized themselves around the most interesting person, without anyone making a conscious decision to do so. He was the valedictorian, he was the state swimming champion. He was the scholarship recipient, and the Forbes 30 under 30 and the successful exit. And the keynote speaker at conferences that Nathan read about in the family group chat, rather than hearing about in conversation. Because conversation in the Keller family tended to be about Marcus, and Nathan had, somewhere in his 20s, quietly stopped contributing to conversations about Marcus, as though they were also conversations about him. Nathan was the other one. Not in a dramatic way. Nobody in the Keller family would have said, if asked, that Nathan was neglected. He was fed and housed and educated and attended. His parents showed up to his graduations, though his mother spent both of them talking to other parents about Marcus's upcoming achievements. And his father fell asleep during the community college ceremony, which Nathan has never mentioned to anyone, because mentioning it would require him to admit that it had registered as anything at all. He became, without anyone planning it, a man who was exceptionally good at being useful in emergencies. He was a wilderness EMT. He was a search and rescue volunteer. He was a person who had spent so many years being the structural support for other people's lives that structural support had become his native language. He drove north through the Oregon dark, and he thought about his brother, and he did not think about anything else. He was the one who fixed things when they broke, the one who drove his father to medical appointments when Marcus was traveling, the one who called the plumber and researched the nursing home options and showed up when showing up was what was required, without anyone noticing that showing up was a skill. or that the person doing it had developed it across 36 years of being the one the family could count on precisely because they had stopped counting on him for anything that required admiration. The logistics job that was adequate. The apartment his parents had visited once in 3 years, the go-bag by the door. The life built around other people's emergencies because building something for himself had never been the priority of a family whose priority had never been him. Marcus Keller is 40 years old and has the specific physical condition of someone who has spent 15 years working 18-hour days and considering exercise optional and food an operational necessity rather than a pleasure, which is to say that the cardiac event that dropped him in the conference room of the Seattle Marriott was not, as Nathan learns from the attending cardiologist at 5:47 a.m., entirely surprising to the people who have been looking at Marcus's blood work for the past 2 years. What is surprising is that Marcus Keller appears to have had no idea that 2 years of blood work had been trying to tell him something. He told me, Dr. Singh says, that he doesn't read reports he doesn't understand. He said his primary care physician had flagged some concerns, but that he'd been too busy to follow up. Nathan looks at his brother through the ICU window. Marcus is asleep, connected to monitors. Looking smaller than Nathan has ever seen him look, not physically smaller, but contained in a way that the Marcus Keller who fills rooms is never contained. What's the prognosis? Nathan asks. Good, assuming he makes changes. The cardiac event was a warning. The underlying condition is manageable with medication, lifestyle modification, and consistent monitoring. What he cannot do is continue at his current pace. He won't do that, Nathan says, not unkindly, just accurately. Dr. Singh looks at him. Someone is going to need to help him understand that his life depends on the alternative. Nathan looks through the window at his brother. I know, he says, that's why I'm here. Marcus, when he is conscious enough to have visitors, performing recovery with the specific audience-aware quality that Marcus brings to every situation, making the cardiac event sound like a challenge he is in the process of defeating. Nathan sits in the corner. He answers questions when they are directed at him. He goes to the cafeteria and brings back coffee that his parents accept without looking at who brought it. He talks to the nurses, whom nobody else has talked to, and learns that Marcus's post-discharge plan requires 60 days of supervised cardiac rehabilitation, and that the paperwork for this has not yet been addressed by anyone. Nathan addresses the paperwork. He is in the middle of the cardiac rehabilitation intake forms when Marcus, whose room he can see through the open door, says his name, not the way Marcus says Nathan's name in family contexts, which is rarely and as a form of acknowledgement but differently. Quietly, Nathan goes in. His parents are in the cafeteria. Marcus is awake looking at the ceiling, and he looks at Nathan with an expression Nathan has not seen on his brother's face in 36 years, which is the specific expression of a person who does not know what to do. I don't know what to do, Marcus says. Nathan sits down beside the bed. I know, he says. The doctor said I talked to her. I know what she said. Marcus is quiet for a moment. I have a product launch in 6 weeks. I have 2 board meetings and a Series C closing. And Marcus, Nathan says, not harshly, steadily, you had a cardiac event. Your body just told you something. The question is whether you're going to listen to it. I don't know how to slow down, Marcus says. I don't know what that looks like. Nathan looks at his brother. I do, Nathan says. I know what it looks like. I can show you. Marcus looks at him. In 36 years, Nathan does not think his brother has ever looked at him the way Marcus is looking at him right now. Why would you help me? Marcus says, because you're my brother. Nathan says, that's sufficient reason. What 60 days of post-cardiac event supervised rehabilitation requires is a restructuring of a person's daily existence, so complete that it essentially requires someone to manage the restructuring itself, and it requires, in other words, exactly the skill set Nathan Keller has been developing for 36 years without anyone calling it a skill set. He takes a leave of absence from the logistics management role that he has held For 4 years at a Portland-based outdoor equipment company, a role that has been, by any professional measure, adequate. A word that Nathan has learned to accept about most aspects of his life that are not search and rescue work. He drives to Seattle. He moves into Marcus's guest room in the Bellevue house. He builds the schedule, 6 a.m. medication. 30 minutes of approved cardiac exercise before 8. Meals planned around the dietary protocol the cardiologist has specified, which Nathan learns to prepare because Marcus has never cooked anything in the Bellevue house. And the kitchen contains $5,000 worth of equipment that has never been used. He manages the calendar, identifying which of Marcus's commitments can be handled remotely, which must be rescheduled, which must be delegated. A process that requires multiple calls with Marcus's assistant Elena, who is 28 and competent, and visibly relieved to have someone on the other end of the phone who wants to make the calendar smaller rather than maintain its size. He manages their parents, who call 4 times a day and whose calls Nathan screens and distills into the information that Marcus actually needs to hear. He does all of this without being asked to do most of it. He does it because it needs to be done, and he is the person who is there, and doing it is what he knows. It is 3 weeks in, on a Tuesday evening, that the conversation finds them the way important conversations do not when it is sought. But when the conditions that would have prevented it have been removed, Nathan is washing dishes. Marcus is at the kitchen table, which is the approved post-dinner activity, seated, calm, no screens, within an hour of sleep. He has a glass of water. He is looking at Nathan's back. "You didn't have to come," Marcus says. "I know," Nathan says. He continues washing the dishes. "Mom said she asked you to, but you didn't have to." "No," Nathan says. "I chose to." A silence. "I didn't know you could cook," Marcus says. Nathan pauses for a moment. "I've been cooking for a long time," he says. "I didn't know." "You didn't ask," Nathan says. He says this without particular heat, but something in the kitchen, in the specific quality of the domestic quiet they have been in together for 3 weeks, makes the sentence land differently than it might have landed at Christmas. Marcus is quiet for a longer time. "I don't think I've been a good brother." Nathan does not say what might be said. He also does not say it's fine, which it is not. And he has spent 36 years saying it's fine and has decided, somewhere in the middle of the second week of making sure Marcus takes his medications at 6 a.m., that he is done with that particular formulation. "No," he says, "you haven't." Another silence. Longer. Nathan finishes the dishes. He dries his hands. He turns around and sits down at the table across from his brother. "The problem isn't that you didn't notice me. Most people who grow up the way you did don't notice what's around them. The problem is that nobody in our family noticed that I was a person and not a system, including me for a long time. It means I spent 30 years becoming very useful in emergencies and not building anything for myself," Nathan says. "It means being the one everyone can count on without counting turns out to have a cost." "What do you want," Marcus says, "from me going forward?" "I want you to ask," Nathan says, "that's all. I don't need you to have been different for 36 years. I need you to start asking questions that include me in the answer." 3 weeks into the 60-day rehabilitation, on the same Tuesday of the dishwashing conversation, something happens that Nathan has not told Marcus about because it happened while Marcus was napping. He received a call from Elena, Marcus's assistant, who had, in 3 weeks of working with Nathan to manage the calendar, developed the specific professional respect of someone who recognizes competence and is not too proud to acknowledge it. "I need to tell you something," Elena said, not as Marcus's assistant, as someone who has watched the way you've been managing this for 3 weeks, the Series C closing. The board is getting nervous about Marcus's absence. They are considering calling the round." She paused. "I keep coming back to the fact that you've been running his logistics for 3 weeks. And you understand the company better than you probably realize. Because you've read everything I've sent you and you've asked the right questions." "Elena, what are you asking?" "I'm asking if you'd be willing to get on a call with the lead investor, not as a representative. Just as someone who understands what the company is doing and where Marcus actually is in his recovery, and can speak to both of those things honestly. Nathan had sat with this for a long time. Does Marcus know you're making this call? No, I wasn't sure he'd allow it. I'll do the call, Nathan said, but after I tell Marcus. He had told Marcus that evening, before the dishwashing conversation. Marcus had been very quiet for a long time. Then you do that, if you want me to. You don't know anything about venture capital, Marcus said. I know how to talk to people who are scared, Nathan said. And I know the operational situation, because I've been reading your company materials for 3 weeks. And I know you, which is more than most people on that call will have. Marcus had looked at him in the way he had been looking at him increasingly across 3 weeks. Okay, Marcus said. Yes, do the call. Nathan does the call with the lead investor, a woman named Judith Arnett, managing partner at the fund, leading the Series C on a Wednesday afternoon in the Bellevue House's study. While Marcus sits in the kitchen with his glass of water and his medications and a degree of visible anxiety that Nathan finds, for the first time in 36 years, humanizing rather than characteristic. He is not on this call performing Marcus, he is Nathan Keller, Marcus Keller's brother, who has spent 3 weeks managing his brother's recovery and who has, in the process, read the company's board materials and investor updates, and understood them in the specific practical way of someone who has spent 15 years in logistics management, and knows how operations actually run versus how they are presented to investors. He tells Judith Arnett what Marcus's condition actually is, and what the 60-day timeline actually means, and what the company's operational picture looks like from the inside, rather than from the investor relations language. He tells her that the product launch can happen on the revised timeline because Elena has already repositioned 3 of the 5 external dependencies. You're not in the company, she says. No, Nathan says, I'm his brother. You've been doing this for 3 weeks. Yes. And before this, what do you do? Logistics management. And search and rescue volunteer work. The search and rescue, Judith says, is that relevant? Nathan thinks about this. I think it is. Search and rescue requires you to go into situations that are bad and stay functional, and make good decisions when the people around you are in crisis and cannot make decisions for themselves. I've been doing that for 11 years. I think it's the most relevant thing about me for this particular conversation. Another silence. The round will hold, Judith says. What I'd like is some kind of formal communication from the company in the next 10 days. Not investor relations language. Something that sounds like what you just said. I'll write it, Nathan says. With Marcus's review and approval, that works, Judith says. Nathan, thank you for this call. Thank you for taking it, Nathan says. He goes to the kitchen. It's fine, Nathan says. The round will hold. Marcus looks up. How? I told her the truth. Turns out that's what she needed. The 60 days end on a Saturday in late autumn, with a final cardiology appointment that Dr. Singh characterizes, with the specific restrained satisfaction of a physician whose patient has done the work, as significantly better than the outcome we were cautiously optimistic about. Marcus Keller, 40 years old, is in better physical health than he has been in a decade. He has lost 15 pounds. He can run not fast, not far, but regularly on a trail through the Bellevue Park that Nathan mapped and paced, and runs with him 4 mornings a week in the cold. He takes his medication at 6 a.m. without being reminded. He cooks, approximately, 3 simple dishes that Nathan taught him, and that he prepares with the specific concentrated attention of someone who has discovered that paying attention to something small is a different kind of engagement than he has previously valued, and not, as he suspected, a lesser one. Nathan, on the 60th day, packs his go bag. He has been packing it and unpacking it in the Bellevue guest room for 60 days, which is a habit so ingrained it happens without thought. And on the 60th day, the habit carries a different weight, because packing it means going back to Portland. Marcus finds him in the guest room. I'd like you to stay, Marcus says. I have a job, Nathan says. I have my life, it's in Portland, I know. I'm asking if we could figure out what the next version of this looks like, you and me. Not the version where you show up in emergencies and then go back to Portland. The version where I'm actually paying attention. Nathan stops packing. He sits on the edge of the bed. What does that look like to you? He says. What Nathan carries from the 60 days into Portland, into the logistics job, into the Tuesday evening calls that become a weekly habit that neither of them has formally agreed to. But that neither of them has missed in the 7 months since is not the satisfaction of having been vindicated. He does not feel vindicated. He feels something quieter and more structural. The specific experience of being seen, finally, by the person who shared his childhood, in a way that does not erase the 36 years before it, but does change what comes after, and what Marcus carries into his restructured company and his 6 a.m. medication and his 4-morning-a-week trail run, is something Nathan gave him on the 4th week of 60 days. A copy of the Wilderness EMT handbook that Nathan uses in his search and rescue work. The principle it contains, which Nathan pointed out and which Marcus read and called Nathan about 3 weeks later. Assess the situation before you treat it. The first responder who rushes to treat becomes the second casualty. You've been doing this your whole life, Marcus said. Yes, Nathan said, assessing. Before treating, Nathan said, yes. Why didn't I know that about you? Nathan was quiet for a moment. You didn't ask, he said. I'm asking now, Marcus said. I know, Nathan said, that's why I'm answering. 1 year after the phone call at 2:14 in the morning, Nathan Keller is no longer in Portland. He is in Seattle, which was not planned, and did not happen quickly, and required the specific kind of renegotiation that only becomes possible when two people have decided to actually look at each other rather than at the version of each other they have carried for 36 years. He took a job at a regional emergency management nonprofit that coordinates the volunteer search and rescue networks across Washington and Oregon. A role that was created in part because of a grant proposal that Judith Arnett's fund quietly supported after a conversation with Marcus about what his brother actually did, and that pays Nathan, for the first time in his professional life, in a way that reflects what he is actually worth. He runs on the trail 4 mornings a week. Sometimes Marcus joins him. Sometimes he goes alone, which he does not mind, because solitude has never been his problem. His problem was invisibility, which is different and which is ending. Marcus made a speech at his company's annual all-hands meeting in October. Nathan was in the audience, asked specifically, because Marcus had decided that the people who work for him should understand what the past year had cost and what it had produced. In the speech, Marcus talked about the cardiac event and the 60 days and the principle from the Wilderness EMT handbook. He talked specifically and by name about the person who had managed his recovery and what that person had shown him. Nathan sat in the back of the room and listened to his brother say his name the way his brother said it now, not as background, not as acknowledgement, but as the specific, named center of a story that was, finally, also Nathan's. He did not cry because he is not, by temperament, a person who cries easily. He noted the specific quality of what he was feeling, catalogued it the way he catalogues things, and put a name to it in the private accounting he has always kept of his own experience. The name was enough, not more than enough. Not everything he might have wanted. Not 36 years returned, just this sufficient, real, present enough. Their parents visited in the spring. His mother spent more time talking to Nathan than she had in 36 years combined, not warmly, not with any particular ease, but with the specific quality of someone who has had their understanding of the family they thought they knew reorganized and is working out, haltingly, what the reorganized version looks like. His father fell asleep after dinner, which Nathan no longer takes personally. 36 years of data is a long time to recalibrate, and Nathan has decided to measure progress in the smallest increments available rather than hold out for the version that arrives fully realized. The lesson of the 60 days and of the 36 years before them is not that the overlooked child is secretly the better one, or that suffering produces virtue, or that families always find their way to fairness if they are given enough time. The lesson is simpler and more specific, that the things people build in the absence of attention are sometimes the most durable things they build. And that it takes sometimes the specific emergency of someone you love being in danger to create the conditions in which they finally look up from their own life and ask what has been in the room with them all along.